And my name is Shadrach. Just a quick introduction. I'm a Power Platform consultant and have about 7 years of experience in Power Platform consulting and development as well. So we'll be continuing from where the lesson stopped last week. I was also part of the meeting last week, and where we're looking at the creation of the forms, views, editing, adding fields, and handling most of the basic table components. And I hope from the last session, if there are any questions, before we take off, you can let me know. We also have Lola on the chat here, so we can address them, and then we'll take off into the lesson for today. But in the absence of none, yeah, we'll also proceed. So, are there any questions? Hope everything was clear from last week. Okay. All right. So then we'll proceed over to the lesson to this week. For this week, I'm gonna share my screen and I have a little slide that I've come up with here. We're gonna be using that as a navigation, and also it is very possible that as we navigate through the course of the training, we might need to make maybe some slight changes to that as well. Okay. Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah. So for this lesson, we're going to be looking at the business logic and business process flows. Last week, after we looked at the table um, and the forms, so when the user is going to interact with a record, might be an event record, might be a community record, might be a speaker, you're going to be interacting with the form. And most times in real business scenarios, there might be some logic, some behaviors that we would observe on the form, and how these behaviors are configured, what we're going to be taking a look at. So we'll be looking at business logic. We could be looking at business rules. We're going to be looking at calculated field, roll-up columns, and business process flow. What are they? What are they used for? And also how to configure these components in Power Platform. Okay, so I'll move to the next slide. Okay, so for this session agenda, we're going to start with business rules. As I've said, when to use business rules. There are also other alternative logic to business rules, which we will not be looking today, but we definitely want to know when it is ideal to use business rules. We're going to look at business process flow, event setup, business process flow, and calculated columns, roll-up columns, status transition, and then we're going to have some live build as well. And then we're starting with business rules. Now, what are business rules? What are business rules in Power Platform? So here we say business rules are no code logic that are applied directly on the form or a table. That means for you to apply this, you don't need to write any code. You don't need to be an expert in pro code. They are no code logic that can be configured on the form. The form you create, you can actually configure some automation, some rules there without writing any line of code. So that is what business rule helps us to do in Power Apps. Now, in business rule, we just see there are limitations and there are capabilities of what the business rule could do. It is not all real logic that can be configured using business rule. So it has its capabilities, it also has its limitations. Now, some of the things we can do in using business rule, I have summarized on this slide here. We can use it to hide certain fields on the form. We can use it to make certain fields to be visible on the form. Maybe we want to make some field visible based on a specific condition, and we want to hide that field based on if another requirement or condition is met. This is where business rule comes in. We can also use the business rule to automatically set the value of a field. If you don't want to impute values manually into a field, you can also use business rules to do that. Then, in terms of making field required, I think you may have gone through this over the course of the last 2 weeks. So when you create a field and you add a field to the form, there are some fields that are required, which means that you must impute value in that field before you save the form. There are some that are not required. You can leave it empty. So we can, if you don't want to set that attribute at the field level, you can also make a field to be required based on a specific condition using business rule. And then we can also use business rule to show an error message when a user is performing an action that is not correct. We can also use business rule to show the error message. And then before we go into the business rule, there is also what we call a scope in which a business rule runs. So when we talk about an entity or a table have different forms. They have the main form, we have the quick create form, we have the quick view form. And Dataverse allows it in such a way that you can have more than one main form. In a real business, let's say experience, let's say in an organization, there might be a different form for those in HR, maybe that has some field that are relating to some HR terminologies or something like that, and maybe a different form for salespeople, a different form for IT guys. So you can have different form and display it based on the rule that the persons using it are playing in the organization. So when you set in a business rule, you can determine and say, okay, I want to set this rule only on this form. I want to set it only on the quick rate form. I want to set it only on the main form for the HR team. You can determine where the rule will run, which is the scope. You can also set the rule to run or at the table level, which means that irrespective of the form, whether it's a HR form, whether it's a quick rate form, it's going to take effect across all the forms that are in that table, in that entity. So those are the scope of the business rule. And then so we move quickly. This is just a few scenarios where we can use business rule. An ideal, I would say an ideal, how would I put it now, scenario would be where you don't want to involve any coding, where no code is required, where you want real-time response in a form. And also when you want to set required field based on some conditions, maybe you don't want to set the field as required when you're creating the field. You only want it to become required when some conditions are met, which we're going to be looking at when we start building this. And then maybe when you want to show and hide some field on the UI, there are some other more complicated rules that you might not be able to carry out using business rule. That is why I mentioned earlier that it has its capabilities and also it has its limitations. But for the scope of this course, we will be of this week training, we'll be looking at business rule. And then we're going to go quickly. So before we start doing the implementation for today, I have highlighted some fields that we will need to create on the current community registration form. So when we start doing the looking into the practical aspect of the training, some of these fields are what we're going to be using to test and build the components that we'll be working with. So first we'll be creating a field called event type. The event type, we're going to set the data type as an option set. So the events may either be an on-site event, it might be a virtual event, which is an online event. and the field description is just going to state the nature of the event. And then also we'll create another field called the unit budget. The unit budget is going to capture the value for each attendee, the budget for each attendee that is coming, that will be attending the event. So let's say in a real world, you're hosting a community event and you're expecting 50 attendees. And let's say for these 50 attendees, you want to provide a bottle of water. It might be you also want to print out an agenda. What is it called? An agenda form or paper so that they can follow through the agenda of the event. It might also be you want to provide some refreshment for them. Then you have to budget, per attendee. Let's say for each attendee attending this meeting, we'll be spending, let's say maybe 5,000, 2,000. So we're going to add that field. It's going to be called the unit budget. And then we'll have another field called event budgets. This event budget is going to be of type calculated. And we'll be doing some calculation. It's going to be the unit budget multiplied by the capacity, which is the total number of attendees that the event can accommodate. And then we create another field called days until event. It's just a field that shows the countdown of the days remaining until the date of the event. And then the last one is going to be the total registered attendees. It's going to be an automated field that will calculate the number of attendees that are registered for that specific event. So we'll go straight here into Power Apps, and then we'll first start with creating of this field, and then we take a look at the business rule. I know a lot have been said, but when we go into the practical, I think most of these things will become very much clearer. Okay, so I'll stop this and then let me go. I should have it 2.0. Okay. Okay. So I hope everyone can see my screen. So here I'm on the community events manager app that was created. So when I go into the community events manager, these are the list of the tables we have. And as I mentioned, we'll start by creating the fields that we'll need while implementing some of the components in the course of this training. I know also a lot has been said. If you have any questions, or maybe while I was talking, there is something that you didn't get, please you can always call my attention back to it, and then I would explain better. Okay, so going to the solution which we created for this event, we created for this this training, and here I'm opening the solution. Okay, and then these are this believe we're using the community event solution. So this is our community event solution where we'll develop all the components that we will be using in the course of the training. And then I can click on the objects to see the objects here. So I said before that we are creating some fields which we want to add to the community events table. And the fields that we had displayed in the PowerPoint. So to create these fields, we go to the list of tables inside the solution. And then I'm going to look for the community events table, which is this. And I think also for this training, I think also we should all have our development up to this stage for everyone, so that we can also do this together. I think that would be a very good idea. So I don't know, for those who have their development up to the current stage, can you let me know if we are on the same page?
Yes, we are.
Okay, that's nice. So then we can then take it one step at a time, and then we'll do this implementation together. So on the community event table, I'm going to come to columns. The columns, which are the fields that we have on this table. And then to create a new column is very much simple. We click on new. And here we determine the column name. So I'm going to go back to this. Okay, so we have the first one, event type. The data type should be choice, and these are the options. So I'm gonna call this okay, event type, and you can add. It's always a good practice to add a little description, though this is optional. So I can just say this shows the nature of the event, and then mention for the data type will be selecting choice, and then the behavior is simple. So when we get to the other field types like calculated and roll up, we would then see what we would then be using the other behavior types. But for now, it's going to be simple. And when you get to this part, it's also going to ask you to sync with a global choice. A global choice is you can create um, a choice that can be used across different tables. So in the component, there's what we call, if you look here, there's something we call, maybe when we go back, I'll show you. There is one we call choice. Okay, we don't have any here. That's why it's not showing on the object. But there's what we call choice. You can create a global choice that you can use across, more than one table, so that each time you want to create a choice field, you don't have to specify the options for each table, and each time you're creating it, you can just create a list of options, and then you can connect to it from any table that you're working with. But for this, would create the choice directly here, so I can see the first will be on site, first choice in the event type. And the second choice, we can see virtual or online, but let's just call it virtual. And then this is practice. I just like keeping my schema name in lowercase. It doesn't matter. You can leave it the way it is, but for me, it's just the way I do it. So, and then we save. Okay, so we have the event type here now, and then we'll create the other one. That should be the unit budgets. It should be of type currency, and also the column type should be, the behavior should be simple. So I'm gonna call this unit budget. Then the data type I would set as currency. Why am I setting this as currency? Is that the value of budget is always going to be in amount. You can't say you're budgeting 2.5 kilograms. No, it's going to be in amounts. You say you're budgeting 5,000 naira, 3,000 naira. So the data type should be currency. And the behavior also we are leaving as simple. And then just put this unit budgets, and then also save. Then we'll go to the next one. this will be event budgets. And I think if it's possible, we can also share this. So even if you're faster than me, you don't have to wait. So it's going to be called event budget, the next one. So I'm going to go over here and I'll call this event budgets. Event budget should also be of type currency. The behavior is okay. We're going to be using this to look at the calculated column. So for now, I would say let's leave this for now. When we're looking at calculated columns, we configure this field and make it a calculated field. So I'm going to go back on this. And then let's look at the other ones that we need. Days until, this is also going to be a calculated field. So we'll leave this for now. And then total registered attendees also be a roll-up field. So we'll also create this field when we're looking at the roll-up fields as well. So for now, we'll take the field we've created. I think we have just 2 of them. We created 1, 2. Yeah. Event type and unit budgets, and then we'll add it to the form. So the same way we add fields to the form in the previous class, you just go to forms. And then we're going to be selecting the main form. Okay, yeah. So here we have the main form. On this main form, we can just let's just do some little tweak this form a little bit. So here is the owner field. We can just say we'll move this to the form header. Just drag it to the form header, and then the owner is going to be there. And then we add the event type. So I call it event type. Put it here. You can just drag from the left hand side and you place anywhere you want to put the form. So the event type is here, and then the unit budget is also another field we create. Now when you look at the left hand side, you will see we created one field called unit budgets, but there is another one called unit budget base. Now this, whenever you create a currency field, the system is going to automatically generate a base field for that currency field. So that's why you see there is a unit budget and there is a unit budget base. This one will be automatically generated by the system. So what we can just do, we take the unit budget. You don't need to add both to the form. Just take the one you created, and then let's add it here. Also after description. Yeah. So we have those 2 fields added on the form. What we do next is we click on save and publish. Okay, so mine is published. So let me know what stage you are, and then we'll know how we proceed. Okay, are we all on the same page here? Or should I wait a bit?
We're good.
Okay, all right. Okay, so after saving and publish, we can then go back to the events, community events, and then we can just open a record to see the changes. And then we were able to see the event type field and also the unit budgets field. And we can see that this fields are now present in the form that we added it to. And if you're not able to see it, you can hold Control and hit F5 to do a hard refresh, or you just refresh your form and then you'll be able to see the field. Okay, all right. So proceeding from here, we're going to be creating a business rule. And this is the rule that we'll be creating using these new fields that we added. So let's say we are having an on-site event. An on-site event might be a physical workshop or a physical conference where we have people seated, and it's going to be like in some form of a physical setting, you know. So if we're having an on-site event, that means we may want to um, know the capacity of the venue that we'll be using for that event. Depends on the number, depending on the number of registered attendees. So let's say we want, we are holding an event and we already have about 200 attendees that have registered for that event. So that means we'll be looking for a venue that can hold about 200 capacity. And also we might say, okay, let's budget about, just let's budget about let's say 5,000 per attendee. Let's say maybe for basic refreshments, and let's make a little budget for them. So the business rule we're going to be creating will be doing this. If the event type is on site, then we are going to display this field called unit budgets. Currently, you see this field is displaying whether it is on site or not. So we're going to display the unit budget field. We're also going to display the capacity field. So this should only apply when we are having an on-site event. However, if it's going to be a virtual event, then we might not need to take into consideration the unit budget. Everyone is going to be joining from there. It might be like just like a Teams meeting, the way we are like this, come joining online. We might not be saying, okay, we want to give out refreshments online, or want to give out handouts online, or maybe a magazine, or let's say anything, maybe like a training material, and make budget for it. We might not need it because this is online. Yeah. So if the event type is virtual, then we don't want to display the unit budgets. We don't want to display the capacity. Anyone can join. They have 200 people joining online. It doesn't matter. We don't need an event to say, okay, we need 50 capacity for this on-site event. So that's just what I'm trying to put together. If it is on-site, then let us display the unit budget field. Let us display the capacity field. But if it's going to be virtual, then we can hide it and we don't need it. And also, when it's going to be on site, we don't just want to display it, we want to make it required, so that the user will have to impute a unit budget amount, and also we have to impute a capacity. So we want to make it required, not just that it will be displayed, but also it will be required. As we can see, the event name is required here. But when we add the business rule, it's going to make these two fields required whenever the event type is on site. And to do that, we'll go back to the solution. We have the solution open here on the form. So we can still create that directly from here, but let me take you back to the table. So here I'm going to click on the table name, which is called community events. If I click on the table name, it brings me to the settings page of the table. And when you look at these components, you see under customizations, you see business rules here. So I click on business rules, and then currently this table is empty because there are no business rules that are created here. You can add existing business rules if you have created one before, but in this scenario we will be creating a business rule from scratch. So to do this, I'm going to click on new, and then it's going to open the business rule editor. Okay, so when you're creating a business rule, it brings you to this page. And then the first thing that I usually do is I rename the business rule. So I'm going to give it a name that matches the functionality that it will perform. So I will just say toggle, just call it display unit budgets and capacity based on event type. Okay. So you can add a description here also to further, give more details about what the business rule will be doing. And then we get straight to it. So when you look at this interface here, there is already a condition created by default. And you have an add button here. This add button here, you can use it to add conditions. When you click on it, you're going to see the first flow here. Under it, there is condition. You can use this to add additional conditions, and you can also use this to perform different actions. So these are list of actions that you can perform using business rule. So here, add recommendation. You can use this to lock and unlock a field on the form. This one says show an error message, which I mentioned earlier. You can use that to display an error message when a user is performing an action the wrong way. You can use this one to automatically set the value of a field. You can use this to add a default value to a field. So when you open a form, by default, it's going to set to a specific value. You can set a field to a specific value by default. And then you can use this to set a field to required. You can use it to set a field to optional. And this one that says set visibility, you can use to hide and unhide a field. So these are the capabilities of the business rule. Anything other than this is a limitation. Okay, so we start by adding a condition. And the condition we've mentioned, so when you click on the condition, it's going to open on the right hand side for you to configure the condition that you want. So I also like to give the condition a name that makes sense to me. So I can say here, if event type is on-site. So this is a condition I'm configuring here. So what do I do? The entity is on community events. And then I'm also going to set here set the field here that I want to configure, and I'm saying if the event type is on site. So I select event type from the list here. The operator is equals. So if the event type is equals, these are the values here because it's an option set field. You see the value we created on site or virtual. So I just want to say if it is on site, and then I'm going to click on apply. So when you click on apply, you can see the name of the condition is updated here if event type is on site, and also you have to configure the conditions here. So it's very straightforward and very simple. So if this is on site, then I need to perform an action. So I'm going to click on add, and there are a list of actions here that I can perform if these conditions are met. So as I said, I want to display this field only when it is on site. So I'm going to click on set visibility. Set visibility is what we use to hide or unhide a field. And then we can follow this straight. There are two branches here. We will use this branch for the else if it doesn't meet the condition. So when it meets the condition, we will use this branch. And that is why you can see there is a tick sign here that says this is good. This one says X. That means if it doesn't meet this condition. So we can say when this condition is met, we want to add the action here. And what I'm going to do, I'm also going to name the action in a way that I will understand. So I can say this is show unit budgets, which is a field. And then This is the entity, and then visibility. Under visibility, I'll select the field which I want to display. It's called unit budgets. And then because I want to display this field on this condition, you leave the visibility to be yes, and that's it. You just apply. So when you apply, you see the text, the display name. It's going to say if event type is on site, show unit budget. And also, not just unit budget, I also want to show the capacity. So I'm also going to click on add, and I'm going to click on set visibility as well. Again, I'm going to add that here as well. So the first is going to show unit budget. The second, I would say show capacity. And then I'm going to look for the field capacity. This is it. And then also leave the option to yes. And then when you apply, it's going to add here. Now, we don't, as I mentioned earlier, we don't just want to show this field, we also want to make them required. So we have a condition to show this unit budget, we have a condition to show capacity. We'll create another, sorry, we have an action to show this as well. Then we'll also create another action to also make them required. So to do that, you click on add, you select an action, this action that says add set business required action. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, set business required. Yeah. So when you click on this, then I'm also adding this when the condition is met. So it has to be on this line. So I would say make unit budgets required. And then I'm going to select unit budget again. And then I'm going to say business required here. And then I'll click on apply. And then we'll do the same thing for show capacity as well to make it required. So I'm going to add and click on add set business required. So for this one, I would say make capacity required. So I'm going to go to capacity, and then also I'm going to set as business required. And then I'm going to apply. You can always scroll to the right to see your actions. And then this also will show you a summary of your configurations here to say if event type is on site, this is what we're doing. Show field unit budget, show field capacity, also set unit budget as business required, set capacity as business required. This will give you a summary of your business rule. Okay, so this is when this is on site, when this condition is met. However, if the condition is not met, we can then specify another condition. So to specify another condition, we click on add condition. So when I click on add condition, I'm going to click on this plus sign to add this condition here. And then here, it will also give me this functionality to configure another condition. Now this condition will be run when this one is not met. So I'm going to say if event type is virtual, because if it's not on site, then it has to be virtual. Then I'm going to set the condition, which is event type is equals to, then I'll select virtual here. So and then click on apply, and then that's going to apply this. And then what I will just be doing is the opposite of this. So I'm going to create another for action. What this action is going to do is going to set this visibility, set the unit budget to hidden. It's going to set the capacity, it's going to hidden, it's going to hide these two fields, and then it's going to set these two fields as well to not required. It's going to set the two fields to not required. So we'll be doing the opposite of the actions that we've configured when the condition is met. So to do that, you click on add action. I'm just going to click on this set visibility as well here. and then just see hide unit budget. Then select unit budgets, set the visibility as no. Click on apply. Add another action, same. Hide capacity. And then we're gonna go to capacity, set the visibility as no. And now we've hide these two, then we also need to make it not required. So I'm gonna go to the action, add another action also to set the required level. Then let me scroll to the right, and then I'm gonna add it here and say make unit budget optional. Then I'm gonna select the unit budgets, and then not business required. Yeah, so leave it not business required. And then we do for the last field, which is capacity. Also want to set capacity as also not required. Let's just make it optional. Then capacity also not business required, and then we add that. So that is all we are configuring in this business rule. And then you can always come and look at your summary. This is if this condition is met, then perform these actions. Else, if this is virtual, then you're performing these other actions down. You can copy this, put in a notepad, and then you'll be able to see your configurations much better. Okay, then one final thing, remember I also talked about the scope of the business rule. So here you can also set the scope. And the scope here you can choose if you want to run this at the entity level. When you set it to run at the entity level, okay, I'll explain to you what happens. But then you can also select to run it in all of the forms if you want. Then if you want it to run only on the main form, you can select this information. It's going to run only on the main form. It's not going to, you'll not see this business rule on other forms. It will just run only on this main form. If you want it to run on all forms, you can select this. If you want it to run on the identity level, you can also select this. Okay. Now, when you select it to run at the entity level, whatever action is being performed by the business rule, like when the business rule is setting a field value, it's going to set the field value and it's going to save the value that it has set to the database. But when you choose to run it at the form level, it's just going to set it on the form. You will need to click save to save that value to the database. So that is the difference between when you're setting the scope as entity level and when you're setting the scope as on the form level. So on the form level, you still need to click save to save the value. But on the when you set it as entity, it's going to automatically save, not just set the value, but also save that value to the database on that form. So for here, we can just leave it at, okay, let's just leave it at the form level. So let it just run on the main form. So we set the scope as the form level, and then we save.
Are you sure you picked the form?
Yeah, this is the information form.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then this is saved. We can then, you can validate if there are any errors in your rule. You can use this option to validate. And then once it's done, you can then click on activate to activate the rule. Okay, yeah. So we have this business rule activated now. We can then go back to the let me okay. So once you're done setting up your business rule, you just click on done and then you'll see the business rule here on the list. You can then publish the table again and then we wait for the publish. Okay. So here it says this is published. Okay. So I think there was some persons in the chat that were also configuring this together. So let me know if you're on the same page here or if you're also done with your configuration. We can just wait for you and then also you may share your screen and then we see how it works for you. So I'm just going to do a hard refresh.
My when I clicked on add the business rule, like it's just been spinning. It has refused to open the business rule screen, and I don't know what's happening. So I couldn't follow along. Oh, I couldn't do it alongside. So maybe I'll do it after the class. But it's not working for me.
Okay, did you cancel and try to open it again? Sometimes it might just be some maybe client side issues. Did you try just like close it and try to open it again?
I didn't. I'll do that now.
Okay.
I was just hoping it would pick up at some point.
Okay. All right. Okay. So after publish, when we look at the form, so this is currently set to on site, and we can see the unit budget field and the capacity field is now optional. If we set this to virtual, you can see those two fields are hidden on the form, and then you can maybe go ahead and save. Yeah, so the field will be hidden for virtual if it's a virtual event. But then if the event is going to be on site, then these two fields will be displayed and it will be required. You cannot save the form without imputing values in the required field. So you need to say, okay, let's put 5,000 for each attendee and then the capacity, let's say we are expecting 500 people to attend this event. Then you can then save here. So that is just a basic example of a business rule. There are a lot of other, functionality and validations that you can use the business rule to achieve. Like saying for speakers, if you go to the speakers form, you might want to set the bio to be required. Maybe using business rule. It's just easy. You just configure that just using the same methods that we have used. Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to take a quick because also we're also racing alongside with the time so that we can also look at other components. But if there is any question here, maybe you want us to go through this maybe very briefly. Is there any question, any part of the this that you do not understand? Is there any part that you don't understand? Is there any question on this?
Um, the part that was a little unclear was when you were explaining the scope between setting it on the entity or on the form. I kind of got lost in the difference. I know you were saying one requires you to save after you're done, and the other one just automatically puts it on the entity. Or I don't know if I got it right, but
Yeah.
I didn't get that part.
Okay. Let me just use this to explain that. Okay. So if we go back here and we go to the community events. So let me see. I'm looking at this. So here now, if we set this, let's say to one site, and then we have these two fields. Now, in this scenario now, I don't think it applies to what we're doing. But there are some scenarios where we want to auto-populate the value of a field using business rule. Let's say we don't want to impute this field manually. We just want a business rule to impute the field. To say, okay, if it is on site, so let's say there might be some specific requirements that you have where when you're building an application and they're saying, okay, they have more than two event type. Maybe, and there are some, okay, let's say there's an event type called annual women's meeting, and in that community they know that the highest number of the total population of the women in that community is 1,000. So you want to set the capacity automatically to 1,000 if the event type is annual women's meeting. Let's say a requirement like that exists. So since you already know the capacity that matches that event type, you might not want to set it manually. You might want to auto-populate it so that the system auto-populates the value based on the event type. So when you want to perform that kind of customization, you can use a business rule to do that. What the business rule will do is when you set this to on-site, it will auto-populate 1,000 here. But when it auto-populates the 1,000 here, if you see, this is still unsaved. So on the form, it's still showing that 1,000 is here. But on the database, this 1,000 has not been updated. It's just on the form. Now, for you to make sure that this value is also pushed to the database, you need to click on save. So what this will do, when it saves, then this value will be updated to this record in the database, in Dataverse, to say, okay, this has now been updated. You'll be able to see this in the views and in other places, in reports, in dashboards, where you're trying to, use this record. But so if you set the scope as entity, the scope of the business rule, when it's auto-populates this field here on the form, it's also going to save the value of this field directly to the database. So it's not just showing you that it's on the form here. It has also been set on the DB as well. Whether you click on save or not, it has been set. So when you set the scope to entity, the data is set on the server side. When we start maybe using server side or APIs, it might be a lot of terminologies, but it's set at the back end as well. However, if you leave it to be on the form level, then that action is only happening on the form side. It is not happening at the back end at the DB. It is only happening on the client side.
Okay.
So most time you might want to change the value before you finally save. Maybe you're not sure. So just leave it, let it just be on the form side. It should not be saved yet. And then later when you're sure, you can then save it and it gets updated to the DB. So that's why most times it is recommended that when you're dealing with business rule, you just keep it at the client side. You just keep it at the form level. Yeah. So that is what the scope does. And another one there in the scope is all forms. So because I said this now to be only on the information form, and you can have more than one main form in Dataverse. I can create another form and create multiple forms. So if I create that multiple forms, I'm going to see all those forms when I'm setting the scope. Here there is only one main form now. That is why you're seeing this one called information is the main form. So if I create more than one main form, you're going to see all of them where you're selecting the scope here. And you might not decide to name them information. You might call them something else. So when you click on the scope, you're going to see all the main form you have. Then you can select and say, okay, I only want this rule on this specific form or this other form. Yeah, it's just to set the scope where that business rule will take effect. And you can also select all forms as we saw here also. I think that is, okay, because this is activated already. Yeah, so that's just about the scope. All right.
Makes sense. The visual representation made it understandable. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we proceed from here to the next one. So we'll be looking at, okay, so this is the business rule we implemented now. Then we'll go to let's go to the calculated fields, and then we'll look at the roll-up fields as well. So I will try to be as fast as possible so we're able to meet time. So the calculated field, what we're trying to do is, for the calculated field, we'll be adding two more fields. Okay, which is event budget and days until. So this one is going to show the countdown to the event date. This one is going to show the total budget, which will be multiplying the unit budget by the total capacity, by the capacity of attendees. Okay. All right. So now to create that, we'll start by creating that field we just showed now. I'm going to go back to the solution. We're still on the community event table. So we'll be looking at the calculated columns now. So to create a calculated column, you click on columns, and then we're going to be creating a new column that will be a calculated column. I'm going to call the name of the column, let's just call it event budgets. And so in a real sense, there might be a lot of costs you want to calculate, like the unit cost per attendee. You want to calculate also the cost of renting out the venue, and then you want to sum all of them to be the event budgets, in a real world experience. But for this example, we'll just be taking into consideration the unit budget and the capacity to get the event budget. So then based on the fact that this is also budget, so budget will also be in monetary terms. So we're going to set the field type to be currency. And then here is where we set the behavior. And the behavior, we're going to call it calculated, because we want this to be auto-calculated by the system. So I'll select calculated here. So once you set calculated, here we have this little warning that says this calculated behavior will eventually be discontinued. We recommend using the formula data type for calculation. So yeah, so there is also another field called formula, but it's not something we'll be looking at now. Maybe it's something you can also read up on. It's also something that is very straightforward. You can set a field as formula here and then perform the same action that you will do if you set as calculated. But for now, let's go with the calculated field. So I'm going to click save and edit to edit the calculation that I want to perform on that column. And when this open up here, it's going to open up this also interface for you here, which is also very easy to understand, makes it very easy to comprehend. So here you can set your condition and you can add the action you want to perform. So if we're going to be multiplying the unit cost by the capacity, that means the two fields definitely are going to have a value in it. So if one is empty and one is populated, then the calculation may not work. But then if you don't want to add a condition, because the condition is optional, you can always come here and add your action. And what action are we adding? We are taking the unit cost, which is the unit budget. This is the unit budget. When you start typing, it's going to show you the name of the field, and then we are multiplying. We use the asterisk to multiply by the capacity, and then this is also going to give me the capacity field, which is a whole number, and that's just the calculation that we're performing there. So you select save, and that's it. And let's say we want to set this, you might add a condition to say, let's set this when the event type is on-site. Okay, on-site. When the event type is on-site, you might remove the condition, but just because these fields are going to be showing only when this is on site. So let's just put this condition there as well. When it is on site, we want to set the event budget to be equals to the unit budget multiplied by the capacity. And then once you're done setting this, you hit save and close. And there you have your event budget field here. And then we're also going to go ahead and create the other field, which is days until event, that we count down to the event time. So I'm going to click on new column again. Okay, so let me call this days until events. And so we want to make this we can call this a whole number. I want to show the number of days, so let's make this a whole number. The field type is going to be a whole number showing the number of days, and the behavior also will be calculated. We want to calculate it, and then I can click on this also to edit the calculation. Okay, we didn't get the screen to show the calculations that we want, so I'm gonna go back here and click on edit. Okay, now it's opening. Okay, so if we're going to count down to the event dates, that means the event dates should be populated. There should be a value in the event date. So we're going to set a condition to say this should calculate when the event dates, we can see when the event dates contains data, which means when it has a value. Then we're going to start calculating the countdown to that event date. So I click on this to save the condition. And then I'm going to add an action. The action is, this part could be a bit tricky, but we want to calculate the difference in days between the current date, which is today, and the event date. So there's a function called difference in days. So here you see it's called, you can calculate in hours, in minutes, but we're counting down in days. We want to use different in days. And if you hover on this different in days, it's going to tell you that you need the start date and time, and then the end date and time. So the start date will be to start counting from now. The end date will be the event date, which is the date the event will be holding. So the start date will be now. The end date will be the event date. So, and those should be in brackets. So we put the bracket there, and then we're gonna say, I think to now we can, yeah. So there's a function called now. You can just select it from here, and then you add a comma, and then you add the end date, which should be the event date, and then this is the event date. Then you close the brackets, and that's all. So just to reiterate it again, there's a function called now, which is the current date when it should start counting, and then it should stop at the event date, the date you set as the event date, which is this. And then we just select. Okay, it should be different in days. Sorry. Yeah, different in days. Okay, I hope this part is clear as well. So difference in days is the function that we use to calculate the difference in days between the current date and the event date. And then you can save and close. Okay, so we also have that here. And then what we'll do, we now go and add these fields to the form. So I'm going to click on the form. We open the main form. And then, okay, let's just add it below the capacity. So we have, okay, the event budget, we can put it somewhere around below the capacity. And then we can have the difference in days down as well. You just drag it to the position where you want to put it, difference in days and event budget. And also calculated field are read only. So that's why you see they are locked here. They are only populated by the system. You cannot add value to those fields manually. So you click save and publish. Okay, now this is saved. Go back to the form, and I'm gonna do Control and F5 to do a hard refresh. Okay, and then you have the event budget here, also calculated by the system to be 23,000. So if you're having 23 naira, if we're having 23 naira per attendee, that means if there are 1,000 attendee, it should be 23,000. So this is going to be auto calculated by the system. And if you update this to say 50 naira per attendee, and you save, it's also going to update. This system is going to auto calculate this field, and this will be 50,000. And then the days until the event. So this event will be on the I think maybe, I don't know what date functionality is this. Okay, this is August 9th, on the 9th of August. So between the current date and the 9th of August, we have 71 days countdown to the event. This is also going to calculate the countdown to the event. And if you change this, and let's say you take it further to say, let it be on September 30th, and you save, and it's going to also update the count down to the event. It's going to be 123 days. This is the difference in days. There are other functions we saw there. You can check the difference in hours, difference in weeks, yeah, but the difference in days is 123. So these are some little customizations that we can do using calculated fields. All right, so is this one clear? Any question on this?
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to ask, so what's the difference between this save and close?
Save and close, we perform the save and also it will close the form. So if you want to remain on this form, you just hit save. If you want to close the form, you just use save and close. It's going to close the form, then take you back to the view.
Okay, so as we are changing all those figures, is it updating to the DB as we are saving?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then
So
you mentioned something earlier around when you create is it a calculated column that the system automatically creates a base for it,
that
right?
is a currency field.
A currency field. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
where
So
you create
why?
a currency field.
So why do we have what was the rationale behind the?
Okay, the rationale behind that is when you create a currency field, there are, how would I put it now? There is a value and there is a currency. So the currency that you've set when you're creating the environment, so when you're configuring a new instance now, we call it an environment, you will select a base currency. And when you select the base currency, it's going to be applied on the whole environment. So when you set a value here, you're setting let's say, let me just put it to say 20. It's 20 that you typed in here. So the base field that is set would check, because this is a currency field, it's going to be used to determine the currency that is set on the environment. So when it fetches the currency that is set on the environment, for this instance, the base is also going to take that and match that with the currency. And when you click, and then when you let's say you click outside of this field or something, or when you save, instead of seeing the 200 you add, the base is going to also merge that with the default currency for this unit budget. So this total amount here with the currency will be held in the base field, different from what you just populated, which will be the decimal value, or the decimal value without the amount. So the system auto creates that to be able to display that field not just as a decimal value or a floating number, but as a currency field, and its default system behavior.
Okay. Thank you. That's clear. So, I have one more question around this currency column. So let's say so I want to have a choice whereby I deal with multiple currency. Is it possible for me to have that? Okay, if I don't want the system to pick. So if I want to pick, okay, I want to put dollars here. I want to put naira here. I want to put cedis here. So is it possible for us to have that option, or how is it going to work around the the logic?
Okay, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And how that logic works is, there are some advanced logic that you can use to do that. However, also, if we go back here, let me see. If we go back to the columns, I'm going to show you something. Okay. So it's like a bit slow. Okay, so these are all the columns that are created. So when you create a table, there are some columns that are system generated. And most times, I don't know if it happens for all custom table, there is what we call, I think, a transaction currency. Okay, yeah. So you can see there is a column called currency. This currency is system generated most times when you create a custom table. So if you want to change the currency, now you cannot change the default currency. The default currency is what you set when you're creating the environment. However, most times you might update the currency, and if you want to update the currency, you can say, okay, I want to add this field to the form. And then when you add this field to the form, if you have configured more than one currency, you will see other currencies that you have. And then you can select, maybe if you, I don't know, maybe something we might have time. Let's just look at it. Let me see if it's something we can check very quickly, because we still need to look at roll-up fields, but we'll be very fast about it. Okay, so let me go, and then let me add this currency field here to below the unit budgets. Then you can save and publish. Okay, let me refresh and see. Okay, so you can see here the currency. This is Nigerian Naira. So if you don't want this currency, you can always change this. And let me see if there are, okay, currently there are only Nigerian Naira here. So the admin can add a different currency. Currency is a table on its own in the environment. The admin can add another currency in denominations of pounds, euro, and dollar. So once those currencies are added on the environment, you see the list here, and you can choose a different currency. And when you choose a different currency, it will be updated. Instead of Naira, you will see the currency you've updated here. So it's not something we can go into now because of time. I would have said, okay, let's create additional currencies and see how it is. But just like the way you're creating a community event, there is a form also. You can create currency data as well. Okay, so I don't have access to create here, I think based on my role, but you can create a currency data. When you're creating, you specify the code, specify the currency name. You can also specify the exchange rates, the precision. You can add the symbol. And for an admin, we have, okay, this create a new record. Yeah, so I think let's try see if that works. Okay, I think I don't have the permission to do that, but an admin will be able to create a new currency record, and then you can select that and then change the currency. It's possible that you can change it.
Let me just quickly add something. So,
Okay.
we'll get to the point after, I think it should be class 5. We'll get to the point where we're going to look at roles and all of that. So you mentioned now that admin can do something. So you'll be able to see the people that you can give roles to, the kind of roles that you can give when you give roles, and what you can do with those roles. However, so for this one, I'm the admin of this. I'll be able to add currency, like you said, but you'll get to the point where you understand roles and what each role type can do.
Okay, yeah. So we'll proceed quickly as we are fast racing against time. I know we didn't start at 1 p.m. We are waiting for some of the participants to join the meeting, but we still try and as as possible to keep to time. Okay, and then so we're going to look at the last type of field, which is called the roll-up field. And then we're going to be creating this field called total registered attendees. So I'm going to come back here, and while I'm creating this, I'm going to be explaining some concepts to you. Now you notice that while we're creating calculated field, whatever we are calculating, they are all present in that entity. They are all present in the form. Unit type, capacity, and event amount, they are all in that same form. But then roll-up field, we can do calculations with columns or with entities that are outside that entity. We can do calculations with related entities. So that is a big difference between a roll-up and a calculated field. And while we're creating this, as we're creating this also, you're going to understand it more better. So I'm going to go back to community events, to the table, and then I'll go to columns now. And mind you, so in this event, we have a related table called event attendees. When you click on the event attendees, you're able to see how many attendees. For here now, we just have one attendees. You can add new attendees. More, you can, let's say, want to add another attendee. So you can say this is tests, and then look for the attendee, and maybe just add a new attendee. So you will see now, if I click save, I'll remain on this form. But if I click save and close, I'm going back to the community form. It's going to close this. And then you see, I have 2 attendees now. So we want to get the total count of attendees that have registered for this event. And we want to keep the total count in a field. So this is where a roll-up field comes. This is another entity on its own called event attendees, and this is another entity called community events. So roll-up field can help us to aggregate the values from a related table and store that on a field on the form of the source table. So to be able to do that, I will go back here, and then I'm going to create a new field that will store the total number of registered attendees. So I'll call it total okay, if I'm going to call it registered, let me use registered as well, so that I also use that to explain something. It's total registered attendees, and it's going to be a number, because you can't say there are 12.5 attendees. No, they have to be an integer. So I'm going to call it a whole number. And the behavior I'm going to set as roll up. So then I will also click on this to edit the calculations on that field. Okay, if it doesn't come up, I have to open it again. I'll look for the field, which is called the name of the field, total registered. This is the name of the field, total registered attendees. Okay, so I'll click on edit. Okay, so here the source would be where the field would be community events. Use hierarchy. This always no, most likely I don't use this feature. And then adding related entity. So the related entity that we want to count is called event attendees. It's already populated here. So there are two related entity here, event speakers. You might also want to set a field to count the number of speakers for that event. But in this scenario, we want to count the attendees. So the related entity will be this, and then the aggregation. So okay, so I have to save this first. Yeah, and then I'm going to add the condition. Now the condition here, because I am saying total registered attendees, some attendees might not be registered. So there is a field here called I think I saw it now. Okay, event attendees. And remember when I was creating this, there's a field that registration status with list cancelled. So I just want to count for only those that are registered. So I have to, okay, let me go back here and say that your registration status here should be equal to registered. Yeah. So this would be a count of only registered attendees, not all attendees, only the ones that have been marked as registered. If you want to count both with listed, you can count this. If you want to count all, both registered with listed and cancelled, you can mark this. Depends on what the use case is. But for now, I'm counting only registered. So I'm going to set the condition, count only when it is registered. And then the aggregation shows you what kind of count you're using. So here there is sum, might be max, might be mean, count, and average. So, but in this use case, we're looking at the count. There might be some calculation you're doing, not in this scenario, might be in a different scenario. You need to check, maybe calculate the average, or let's say you need to check the average or the minimum or the maximum. But here we're using the count. So you select the count and then you save. So that's all. Also, this interface also makes it very easy to understand the source, which is the table you're adding the form to, the related entity, which is the event attendees, the filter, you only want to count on when the registration status is registered. You can add multiple conditions, add another condition to say when it is registered, and when the maybe you want to add and say when it is registered and when the registration date is greater than last year or is greater than this year, or when the opt-in notification is here. You can add multiple conditions there. We'll just keep it simple and then we save and close. Okay, and then yeah, you can then add that field to the form. And the difference, or another difference between a calculated field and a roll-up field is that each time you save the form, a calculated field gets updated, but a roll-up field will be updated by the system every 12 hours. It will be updated by the system every 12 hours, though there is a functionality for you to trigger an update. If you're on the form, you can manually trigger an update, but automatically, if you're going to leave it to get updated automatically by the system, it's going to be done every 12 hours. So I'm saving and publishing the form so we can see the changes. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna do a hard refresh. Okay, so here it's just showing us that there are two registered attendees, and this field was last updated 1:37 p.m., which is I just to trigger the manual. You want to trigger the this to trigger it manually so that it recalculates. There's a calculator icon at the front of the roll-up field. Once you click on that, it's going to give you a button called recalculate. You click on the recalculate, it's going to show you the number of registered attendees, which are these two here. So if I go back and I update this guy and I say I don't want, let me put this guy on wait list, and I save and close. Yeah, this is not it's going to take about 12 hours for the system to update this to say, okay, only one is registered now, but you can also trigger it manually. You click on the calculator icon, it's going to give you this button. You click on it, it's going to recalculate and show you that now this is just one registered attendee. Yeah. So this is in summary how the calculated field works and the difference between the calculated field and the roll-up field. Okay. So is there any question on this, on the roll-up fields? Okay, so I think in the absence of none, seems there are no questions here. However, we are also not at a very good place regarding the time. So I think here I just leave it to Molala. We still have the business process flow to look at. I don't know if time will permit us, so maybe if it's something, maybe we can take a look at some other time. Yeah, so Lola, can you?
Yeah, would you want us to would you want, because the time has gone and I see that two people have actually dropped again from the call. So
Yeah.
would you want us to maybe do it? Can you add it to what you're doing next week, or do you think we should go on? What do you think?
Yeah, we can add it. We can add it, and then I think for next week, basically we're just looking at dashboards, which I think we can cover dashboards in about 15-20 minutes, and then we can maybe use an additional 20 minutes as well for the. May not be to 20 minutes for the business process flow. Yeah, so maybe we can just put it together.
Yeah, we would also be showing the capstone project next week. So I think all of that will fit into 1 hour 30 minutes comfortably.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. So then I think we have one assignment on the slide for this week. Okay. So the assignment, I don't know if they have this, or maybe something we sent to them after the call. Yeah, but this is the assignment. Then also there are some tasks that you need to build here. You can leave the business process flow task because we've not looked at this. But you can add a calculated column on the registration table. Um, and then the business rule, you add the bio required and venue capacity is greater than 0. But then we'll share, I think this will be shared on the chat. Yeah. So we put it in details and to be more detailed, and then we share the assignment for this week on the chat. So I would stop sharing from here. And if there are any questions, before we round up the session, you can let me know. But the assignment will be shared on the chat. Yeah. So in the meantime, if there are any questions based on what we've looked at today, yeah, you can let me know. And also for next week, I think I would encourage us to join on time. There's a lot we are carrying over from this week to next week, and I would tend to be a bit more faster, so we are able to cover everything that we have. Since we also have the video recorded, it's something that you can also go back and review from time to time. But then, yeah, this is where we call it a day. So I'll hand it over here to the
all right. No, there's nothing else for me to say. We can just end. But thank you so much, Shadrach. This is it's really beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. You heard everything that Shadrach said. Next week, please come early. We'll send the assignments on the group. Please, if we don't send it early, send us just drop a message. Most times it's possible for us to forget. All right. So that's it from us today. See you next week. Bye bye, everybody.